Hello, and welcome to another episode of Haunted Historian, a podcast documenting the stories and presence of the undead. I am your host, Gail Gould, and today is going to be a very special episode. Thanks to our lovely Patreon supporters, enough money has been raised that I have been able to personally fly out to one of my favorite haunted castles, none other than the great castle Elsinore in Denmark. My lovely fiends, I have been wanting to visit this fascinating site for so long, I cannot express how incredibly grateful I am for all of your love and support. I was able to personally interview the keepers of the castle rather than take a normal tour, although I did that too. But you're probably wondering, what's the big deal with this castle? Well, the infamous story of the Elsinore murders is one of the bloodiest revolving the royal houses of Europe, and certainly the most horrific in Denmark. But first, a quick history rundown. During the early 1500s, Norway and Denmark were worked in a power struggle over land. As countries do. The short war ended with King Hamlet of Denmark personally defeating the Norwegian monarch King Fortinbras in combat, thus winning the war and claiming a large swath of Norwegian territories. King Fortinbras' son, of the same name, was understandably enraged at his father's death and the loss of his people's land, and started putting together forces to attack Denmark once more. This prince, however, did not have the direct power to do so, as his uncle inherited the throne instead of him, for reasons unknown. This did not deter Prince Fortinbras, however, and so both Norway and Denmark were on the edge and bracing for further war. This is where our story begins. Elsinore Castle was built in Helsingør, Denmark, at the head of the Øresund Sound. It's a beautiful and incredibly important city to Denmark's history and trade. I was able to reach out and meet with local historian Professor Kirsten Møller and ask her to tell us the tale of what went down in the castle 500 years ago. Thank you again, Professor Møller, for agreeing to talk to me today.
No problem. I'm excited.
So, could you start us off at the beginning? What were the Elsinore murders?
Well, for one thing, Elsinore murders is a bit of a misnomer. Not all of the deaths were intentional, although Elsinore homicides doesn't quite work either. The whole mess was a grisly mix of purposeful, accidental, and questionable deaths.
So there were quite a few people involved then?
Oh my, yes, the entire royal household and a number of courtiers.
What initiated the string of deaths?
The first death, actually. You see, King Hamlet died, and his brother Polonius married his widow, thereby claiming the throne and disrupting the line of succession.
Who should have been king then?
The king's son, Hamlet Jr.
So Prince Hamlet fought Polonius over the throne?
Not exactly. As the story goes, Hamlet was visited by the ghost of his father.
Wait, so there were already ghosts in this ghost story?
Yes.
Compounding ghosts! We love to see it.
Uh-huh. Anyway, his father's ghost told him that he had been murdered by Polonius, and that Hamlet needed to enact revenge. Hamlet agreed, but took a while to actually do so. Meanwhile, everything went to
How so?
Well, Hamlet started to go insane while planning his uncle's murder, although there's some speculation he was faking it.
What was his plan?
He never really had one, which was part of the problem. Tensions simply continued to rise in the royal household until one day Hamlet snapped and attempted to kill Polonius, but mistook a courtier for his uncle and killed him instead.
2 ghosts!
Long story short, things came to a head and Hamlet faced down Laertes, the son of the dead courtier, in a duel. Laertes had plotted with Polonius, who was fearing for his life, to rig the match, both by poisoning the blade Laertes used, as well as handing Hamlet a poisoned drink. Their plans worked against them, however, as the queen, Hamlet's mother, drank the poison instead, and during the course of the duel the swords got swapped between the two opponents, and Laertes fell to his own poisoned blade.
4 ghosts!
Aha! After the duel, as Laertes and his mother died, Hamlet ran Polonius through and then died himself, as he had also been scratched with the poisoned blade.
A real bloodbath! But was there not a lady involved somewhere who drowned?
Ah, yes. Poor Ophelia. She was Hamlet's love and the sister of Laertes. Hamlet's mad behavior, the death of her father, as well as other circumstances, drove the poor girl to hysteria. She was found floating in a pond on the property. and it was never clear whether it had been an accident or intentional, whether by murder or by her own hand.
How awful.
Yes, oddly enough, one of the more popular aspects of the story.
That's 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 deaths!
In 4 months' time.
Incredible. Awful, but fantastic. In the unbelievable sense, I mean, you know.
Yes. And there were a handful of other related deaths, away from the castle, however, so it's unclear whether their ghosts also haunt the premises.
So the castle is indeed haunted?
After that bloodbath, I don't know what else could qualify a castle to be haunted.
And how did those sorry events relate to the war between Denmark and Norway?
Well, during this final duel, the Prince Fortinbras of Norway attacked the castle with his forces. Amid the already ongoing chaos, however, the royal house was distracted from the attack. As Hamlet died, he named Fortinbras, who he had respected, as the new king to pick up the pieces of the kingdom.
As the sons of two rival kings, why would Hamlet do such a thing?
Well, they do say he was insane.
True. Oh, well, thank you for sharing the tale with us. It's always better to hear from a local than Wikipedia.
Yes, my pleasure.
7 ghosts, if not more. I'm excited to go see this castle myself. Next, I went and spoke with the castle's head groundskeeper, Aya Jorgensen, who had mixed opinions regarding the haunted nature of the grounds. This is a beautiful property.
Thank you. My team and I work hard to keep it in proper order. Tourists like pretty gardens, huh?
I know I do. We walked around for quite a while. I totally gushed over the gorgeous landscaping and endless sea of flowers. Pictures are up on our Instagram, @TheHauntedHistorian. Check them out! How long have you been working here?
Nearly 25 years now.
Wow. And in all that time, have you ever noticed any paranormal activity?
The ghosts? Nah. Never seen anything myself, although some of the hands have been spooked when working in the evening.
What sort of things have spooked them?
Probably nothing, honestly. When you work someplace that's supposedly haunted and it gets dark out, the mind starts working against you. Every creaking branch or rabbit in the grass is suddenly the devil himself ready to drag you to hell, you know?
I see. Clearly not a believer.
But there are some places that are unnerving. A little spook now and then is understandable.
Unnerving? How so?
Oh, here, I'll show you.
Aya led me down one of the paths. It was a longer walk, but the depths of the gardens opened up to a gorgeous little pond, ringed with reeds and filled with lily pads. A great willow tree arched over it with a sign explaining what the spot was. Once again, check out our Instagram to see. This is the place where she...
Yep, one of the most popular spots on the tour. Apelia supposedly drowned here, and, well, it always gives me chills. It's too beautiful a spot for something so nasty. Sometimes when I'm weeding the edges, I can't help imagining an icy hand reaching out and dragging me down below too. Ponds like these are the worst to drown in. The reeds and stalks at the bottom grab at you until you're all tangled up with no way to swim to the surface.
That's terrible!
Yeah, that's the way it is. I wouldn't be surprised if she wasn't the only poor thing to meet their end here.
Do you say this place gives you the chills?
Doesn't it for you?
And I have to admit, after hearing all that, it did. That was unfortunately all I got out of Aya, who was insistent that any actual ghost sightings were branches and rabbits. For those who remember our episode on Condor Castle, castles often are still owned by important families who are in charge of the upkeep and preservation of said castle. Elsinore happens to be kept by the Koss family. Emil Koss personally walked me through the halls of the castle and told me of his own experiences with the ghosts.
Oh, they're definitely real. I've been seeing the ghosts around here since I was a boy. They're all over the place, too. I suspect they get bored and so roam around.
What are they like?
Like pale floating figures in the corner of your eye. Barely there one moment and gone the next.
Have you been able to tell who you've seen?
No, there's not much substance to them, I'd say. They all look the same, like lost souls. Sometimes I hear them too,
Hear them.
moaning and grumbling to themselves mostly. I doubt it's very nice being stuck wandering a cold castle for centuries with only the people you hate for company.
Quite. You say they wander? Ghosts in these situations typically hang around a spot of significance to them. Maybe you've seen different entities in these various locations but couldn't tell the difference?
Maybe. You're the expert.
Is there anywhere in particular you see them most often?
The throne room, definitely, where everything went down.
Would you mind if I take some equipment in there to see if I can get a reading on any activity?
Go ahead. Just don't touch anything.
So, I'm in the throne room, and I'm not getting much of a reading, but there's still something here. It's stronger as I get closer to the throne. It's certainly not the highest reading I've gotten. Nothing at all like I was expecting with this case, especially with what Mr. Koss said. I'm gonna try the other rooms. Unfortunately, I found a few spots in the halls where readings were up a minuscule amount, but that was about it. I began to fear that this old castle, rich in story, was a bust when it came to any actual ghosts. As the castle had to close up for the day, I was escorted out the great front doors and ran into a young boy. His name was Alma, Mr. Koss's son, and when I asked him about his own experiences, admittedly a little desperate, he said,
Mom says there aren't actually any ghosts. That's just stories for tourists.
"So you've never seen them? You've never been scared?
No, they're just stories.
Have you seen anything strange or heard anything?"
Well, my toilet at home flushes by itself sometimes.
And with that, I left for the day, dejected, but glad I was able to tour such an amazing site regardless. I'm shocked that there didn't seem to be more activity, either that I caught or that others had experienced. I can't help but wonder how much truth there was in Mr. Koss's story. Regardless, Elsinore Castle is incredible. Its story, while nasty, is fascinating all the same. If you want to look further into the history of Elsinore and the town of Elsinore, you can find some quick links in the episode's description. I recommend you give it a look. Thanks to Professor Kirsten Moller, Ea Jorgensen, and the Kosses, as well as the rest of the workers at Elsinore for their wonderful hospitality. And thanks to you, dear listener, for helping make this dream of mine a reality. Our top tier shout-out patrons today are Allie Ward, Ron Stampler, and Beth Warner. Thank you and the rest of our patrons for your wonderful support. Remember, you can send in requests for episodes or your own ghost stories at our Twitter or Instagram at The Haunted Historian. Until then, lovely fiends, stay spooky! Hey, Bobby here. Out of character real quick, I want to thank my family for providing voices to this ridiculousness, and thank you if you've listened this far. Also, I kind of fudged reality a bit for this faux podcast, so here's some quick fun facts about the real Elsinore Castle. For one thing, it's actually Kronborg Castle, and so the play version is named after the town, Elsinore, or Elsinore in English. Additionally, what I said about families caring for castles is true, but I didn't think to look up whether or not that's the case with Kronborg until I'm recording this end of it here. Denmark's castles are actually all owned by the government and cared for by the National Museums Organization. I came up with the names for the characters in this faux show myself. I also apologize for probably butchering some of these Danish words that I tried. Originally, I was going to do more of the ghost hunting aspect, but inspiration struck with going for more of a fun, educational, gimmicky, exploratory show. I really love the podcast Ologies by Allie Ward, and listen to the way she conducts interviews for how I wanted to structure this project. So I added her as a fake patron at the end. Obviously, the third was Miss Warner, and the other, well, I needed a third name, and he's a character from another podcast I love. Anyways, yeah, that's it. Take care.